and welcome to Aw Yeah Comics. Today, we are here with Marc, myself, and Filip. Filip Sablik is here today. How are you?
Hey, everyone. I'm doing great. Good to see you, Franco. Good to see you, Marc.
President of Boom Studios. Okay, let's show the proper respect.
President of publishing, because we actually have a president on the media side as well. So got to give respect and due to Stephen Christie, who does an awesome job with our Hollywood stuff.
Yeah, we don't like that guy as much though, because he's not here with us right now. So
Fair enough.
You're our favorite president at Boom. The other guy, I'm sure, is great.
I'm your favorite president of Boom, who is with you currently, for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. Like this is my favorite recorded video that I've done all day.
Wow, that makes me feel special.
On that note, let's have a conversation. We're gonna have a short chat. You can answer freely or not. It's up to you, because this is a free video that everybody will see. But one of the first questions, what was your first start in comics?
I started, in terms of my first job, my first paid work in comics, I started as a customer service representative at Diamond Comic Distributors. I went to art school thinking I was going to do what you do, Franco. I thought I was going to write and draw comics. And then I graduated art school, and I had this moment where there was about, I want to say like 25, 30 people in the illustration department that I graduated from. And I was in my senior thesis critique, and I looked over and went, I'm better than those 10 people there, but I'm nowhere as good as those 5 people over there. Oh, I'm in the middle. It's not a great place to be. And I had this moment where I thought, well, like
I was all the way down at the other end of the 10 people that were worse than you. So I should have given up a while ago. But
well, maybe that speaks.
It's never too late to give it all up.
But maybe that speaks more to your perseverance and grit than mine. But I was on the early days of the internet looking online while I was working my job at school, as I was getting ready to graduate, and I saw I realized that Diamond. I knew about Diamond. I don't know that I realized that they were based in the Baltimore area, which is where I went to school. But I saw they had a job posting for customer service, and I thought, well, I'm not qualified for a lot with a bachelor's in the arts, but I have waited tables, so I have done customer service. So I applied for that job thinking that it was going to be kind of like an entree into the industry, and it would give me an opportunity to like meet some folks and like begin to network. And, I think I was even at, 21, smart enough to realize that networking was an important component of breaking in anywhere, especially creative field. And like most careers, it just kind of snowballed from there and took a lot of unexpected turns that I never really planned for, but I'm incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, actually, you and I've actually known each other since you were in those days at Diamond, all the way back with Patrick the Wolf Boy.
Yeah, almost 20 years now, which is crazy. I didn't think either one of us was that old.
I am, and I look it, but you still look like you're like 25 years old, which is annoying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here to annoy you.
I'm indifferent to either of your looks, so I guess that's good. So now, Franco, you go first.
I was going to say, what were some of the fun things that you encountered with Diamond? You said you had some fun stuff that happened while you were there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd say like Diamond is, if anybody is out there watching or listening and is like, how do I break into comics and how do I learn about this business? The entry level jobs at Diamond are like perfect comic book 101 courses, like, because you get to see every aspect. You get to see how the retail side of the business works. You get to see how self-publishing and creators operate, how larger publishers work, and you see how the whole distribution pipeline works. So that was really super informative. But eventually I moved up to the purchasing department, and there I got to work with Jeff Smith as he wrapped up Bone. So I was there for the last 5 years of Bone and got to see him, finish that, hit that landmark issue, collect everything, release the Bone all-in-one edition. Jeff was one of the first creators. I remember talking about this idea that he was really thinking about when he was creating Bone, that he wanted to be like Tolkien with Lord of the Rings. And he showed me in his studio once, he's like, look at all these different versions of Lord of the Rings that I have. I have the 1-book edition, and I've got the 3-volume, and I've got the hardcovers and the soft covers, and like, look at all this stuff you can do with it. And it's been really cool to see him, continue to like build and get back more out of this thing that he invested so many years of his life into, right? Like so many of us in comics, it's like on to the next thing, right? But like Jeff has really built this perennial, and I think that was always his plan, which was super impressive to watch. I also was there for the end of Cerebus, so I worked with Dave Sim and Gerhard as they wrapped up and hit that what up until last year was the longest running series that was continuously worked on by any one creator. So that was really fun. I was Robert Kirkman's publishing contact when he was self-publishing under Funkatron. A lot of people don't remember that Robert did that early on. And
wasn't that didn't he have Battle Pope with that and all that stuff? Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I tell Robert, I can count myself an original fan because so the way that Diamond Previews work is he was a second for the back of the catalog publishers. So these are the independents, and Diamond would have these designations that they still use, which are the featured item designations. And the way that it worked when I was there is at the beginning of the month when we get all the solicitations in, the brand managers, which was the role that I had on the team, there was about 5 or 6 of us, would get together and have a meeting to determine the featured items. So people would bring the books that their publishers had solicited and say, I think this should be a featured item because of X, Y, or Z. And I think my first or second meeting, when I didn't know anything, I was like, Battle Pope. That's like what we should do. And of course, like what I realized in retrospect is that, there were all these publishers that were much more established and larger that were doing really important projects that were going to generate a lot of dollars for retailers. And Robert at the time and Tony were just getting started. And this was kind of like a very cool but novice kind of like effort. And so that was an educational process for me. What else? There was, I also remember when I was at Diamond, I was good friends with Mark Smiley, who founded Archaea, and he had just put out his book and maybe like one other project. And I was at San Diego and stopped by to like check in on him. And he showed me the pages, the sample pages that David Peterson had just dropped off from Mouseguard. And I remember he showed it to me and was like, this is going to be gigantic. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. And so that was an example of something that was a first-time creator, a relatively small publisher that I went in and I championed early on. And I was like, we have to make this a featured item. This is like unlike anything that's out there. And so it's been cool, in subsequent years, obviously getting to publish David and becoming friends with David and the folks over at Archaea has been kind of a cool full circle moment.
So it's obvious nothing about comics or how to spot talent.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he's met anybody. I thought he was talking about networking earlier. What a joke! It's really, thanks for wasting our time, Philip.
Yeah, well, actually, here's the fun thing about I think any creative pursuit, and I tell this to a lot of like younger folks that work at the company. Like, if you are always challenging yourself and you're always striving and you're always trying to get better, and I know I'm talking to 2 guys that are always doing that, you will always feel like an imposter, right? Always feel like, when is somebody going to figure out that I have no idea what I'm doing? Oh. And the jig is going to be up, right? And Richard Branson has a great famous quote that like speaks to this, which is if your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough, right? And one of those moments that I had like that was, Mark, right before we started, we were talking about my stint at Top Cow, and I went over there in 2006, and Matt Hawkins hired me. He's the president of Top Cow over there, but I had never met Marc Silvestri, like just hadn't had that opportunity at Diamond. And Mark was, the Image founders were like the Mount Rushmore of comic creators for folks of my generation. And so the first chance I had to meet Mark was at Wizard World, Texas in Arlington. I flew in, I was working remotely from Maryland, and Top Cow's based out of LA. And so I had been working for the company for maybe like, I don't know, 3-4 months, but I still hadn't met Mark. And we show up at this, like did you guys go to Wizard World, Texas ever?
Back when I think I did once. Yeah, I think so. We've done a lot of shows.
So the context is like Wizard World Texas was in Dallas in the way that Wizard World Chicago is in Chicago, right?
Out there.
And which is to say it's in Arlington, Texas by the Six Flags. And it was by the Six Flags because there's a bunch of hotels and like chain restaurants around Six Flags, right? Yeah. And so we're sitting in this like pretty unimpressive like hotel sports bar out by the Six Flags in Arlington, Texas. And it was a bunch of us from Top Cow, and we like the board like wait staff there could not have paid less attention to us if they tried. And so trying to get food and drinks and having and then Mark texts one of the guys there, "Hey, I'm at the hotel. Are you guys still up?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're all hanging out at the bar." It's like, "Okay, I'll be down in 10 minutes." And then Mark walks in, and if you've ever seen a picture of Mark or met Mark, he's like almost 7 feet tall. I mean, he's like absurdly tall. And
there's not many guys in this industry that are as tall as I am. But when I walked in and I saw him, I'm like, whoa, that's a tall drink of water.
Yeah. And he's kind of like got this like long hair, and like he wears sunglasses indoors. And so he rolls in, and these waitresses did not know who he was, but immediately they were like, "Who is this rock star that has just walked into our bar?" And everybody kind of like gravitates over to him. And which, like, again, for me was like, yeah, that's exactly how I picture Marc Silvestri, one of the founders of Image and this like rock star artist. And he walks up there, and we say hello, and I finally get to meet him in person. We're chatting for a couple minutes. And then as we're standing at the bar, he kind of leans over, he goes, "So Philip, what do you think we could be doing better? What do you think we should be doing?" And I had this like kind of like brain cracking, melting moment where I was like, why are you asking me? You're Marc Silvestri. But it's that moment where you're just like, oh, right. Like I'm pushing past where I'm comfortable, and therefore I feel like, why is he asking me? And meanwhile, Mark was like, "You're a really talented, smart dude who's been like doing great work at Diamond, and we hired you because we thought you were awesome. So like, I want to know your opinion."
I have just a quick, funny Marc Silvestri story. I've only met him twice. Wizard World Chicago, that hotel used to have Knuckles, the sports bar. It's something different now, but I used to work for a convention in Florida, and we would attend every year to talk to retailers and get different guests to come to the Florida show. And my boss and I were drinking with Ray Park, Darth Maul, and Mark and his wife and several of the other Top Cow people came in. And there were no tables or booths. We had more than enough room at our table. So offhand, we just said, "Hey, come sit with us." Like, we didn't know them. So we spent the rest of the evening drinking with Mark and his wife and Darth Maul. And then 2 days later, I ran into Mark in the show walking down the aisle. And I was like, "Hey, it was great to meet you the other night and hang out." And he goes, "I'm sure it was awesome. I don't remember any of that, but it was nice to meet you." Kept going. So, Marc Silvestri. So, one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk to you is, and definitely with Franco on it, is so you did a video for the retailers, and I would imagine for the fans as well, but definitely for the retailers recently, talking about a third place. So everybody should have three places: your home, your work, and one place that is neither one of those, that is a second home, or the place you want to go to that you're comfortable with or comfortable hanging out with, and that comic shops should strive to be that third place. And that is something that in the 8 years All Yeah has been open, we take very seriously. We've never called it a third place, but the feel of that is something that means a lot to us. Art and Franco have, a tremendous background in all ages comics, in family-friendly fare. So our stores are, we try to make them as welcoming as possible to everybody, all walks of life. We don't care. And so your video really spoke to me personally. And you and I have talked in person before. I agree with, I don't think I've ever disagreed with you with any of the things that you say, particularly when you're talking with the retailers. So what made you want to reach out to the retailers with that particular video? Like, what was it? Did you just wake up one day and be like, you know what? I'm sure people are thinking this, but I want to be the one. Boom wants to be the one that comes out and says this implicitly now it's really an unprecedented situation. None of us have really dealt with anything like this in our lifetimes, and hopefully we won't again. But so take it away.
Yeah, I think. Well, first of all, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it. And I don't think I've ever disagreed with anything you've said, other than those like shots you've taken at me when we've been hanging out at Diamond Summits. But outside of that, I agree with you 100%.
But you had those coming.
You're probably right.
I don't recall shots at you.
No. I think we were joking around.
Yeah. Well, I usually take shots at Mike Pellerito, the president over at Archie. That guy has it coming.
Yes. Well, he's got it coming, obviously. No, Mike is one of the nicest guys in comics, and everybody should be lucky enough to know somebody as kind as that dude. I think there were two things. One, when all of this started to happen, and particularly around the time that Diamond decided to halt distribution, which, for the record, I agreed with. I think it was the smart thing to do, and I think it was the responsible thing to do, and it was a really tough decision for everybody involved. And I think that something that the folks that were being critical of them at the time didn't realize is what kind of sacrifices they were making by themselves and for their team, with their team to make that happen. But so when all this started to happen, Boom is the number 5, maybe, somewhere between number 4 and number 6 publisher on any given month in the direct market. And I think my expectation and what I kept looking for was a voice of leadership in the publishing community to kind of like come out and like point people in the right direction. Right. And I often say that, like, I've been lucky enough to consider Paul Levitz one of my mentors. He's on our board of directors, and I get to talk with him on a weekly basis. And he's been just massively influential for me in terms of like how I approach the business and how I approach being a publisher. And, when I was at Diamond, if something like this had happened, or in fact, I was at Diamond when 9/11 happened, like Paul would have been one of those voices of leadership that would have stepped up and said, hey, here's what's happening. Here's how we need to deal with it. Here's how we should respond as a community, as an industry. And I kept waiting for it. And I wasn't seeing it as consistently, and I wasn't seeing it within the retail community, and what was more concerning to me is very quickly what I started to see is, in my opinion, everyone focusing on the wrong thing, which was like the stuff, right? Who has the stuff? When do they have the stuff? What kind of stuff do they have? Do they have more stuff than I have? That's a perfectly like natural human reaction to have. And I don't fault anyone for having that reaction, but I did have one day where I woke up and I thought, I think we're focusing on the wrong thing. And I don't see anybody else stepping in and saying what we offer in this segment of the market in comic shops is this idea of community. That is ultimately why people show up every week. You know, they show up to see you, Mark. They show up to see you, Franco. They show up to like interact with the other people in the store, because if all they wanted was the stuff, there's easier, cheaper ways to get it.
Yeah.
You know? So I guess that was a long-winded way of answering the question, which is to say, I was hoping somebody else would say it, and I wasn't seeing anyone else saying it. So I thought, okay, well, I guess it's going to have to be us. And I floated the idea out to Ross, and he was like, yeah, we absolutely have to come out and say this. And kind of the last piece of it is, you know, we've been very fortunate as a company, as an organization, over the last 5 to 6 years to build up a lot of goodwill and a lot of trust with the retail community. And my attitude was, if we don't occasionally use that goodwill to say something important, to do something other than just push our product, then like we're wasting an opportunity. You know, we're not behaving in line with our beliefs and our values.
I think two things. One of the things I'm always very cognizant of in my role at Aftershock and prior to that at Archie, and I'm sure that you and definitely Morgan and everybody sees it too. The retailers remember. we have long memories. We remember the people that help us out, and we remember the people that don't. And that was a thing that I kept seeing in comments from the retailers on the different boards or whatnot. Is we're gonna remember this. We're gonna remember this. And there was a slew of companies who stepped up quickly, and Boom was certainly leading that charge. That really seemed concerned with, like, what can we do, not just to sell more of our books or help a store sell more of our books, but what can we do to make sure that those stores are around 2 and 3 months from now? Franco and Art and I had a conversation a long time ago, years before we ever started a store, and where I explained my theory on what comic shops are, or what they can be at their best. It's the bandstand on Main Street. It's the place that people go to congregate. It's when you're talking about cool events happening, comic shop. If you're talking about disseminating amazing information, or you want to talk about the latest casting, or this best cover, or this awesome toy, it's the comic shop. We get taken into people's lives. We get taken into people's routine, and we get taken into people's families in a lot of cases, where we see the best and the worst that they go through. We've gone, Franco and I, actually early on, right after we started this store, we attended the funeral, for the son of a friend of ours, or for one of our customers that we'd only known for maybe about a month. And he was completely shocked that we were there. And we had a signing later that day and everything. And we're like, well, where else would we be, man? You need us here. And, graduations and weddings and funerals and new jobs, and we're moving this or we're moving our family there. We get to see all of that. And it's a privilege that it's really kind of wonderful. And I know that Art and Franco, and I'll kick this over to Franco, like they have moments at conventions with fans that come up to them, and somebody will just, hey, I want to buy $50 worth of comics. Just give it to the next 10 kids that come up. Or just different fan interactions. So when you were talking about the third place, like I said, that really struck a chord with me, because we do everything we can to make sure that our stores, and for the record, in my capacity, both as a retailer and working for a publisher, I have so many other retailer friends who I'm in awe of, the things that they do in their store, the communities that they build, both within the store and the impact that they have in the community around them. And I love anytime I see a publisher tap into that zeitgeist, because we're such a big part of the different communities that we're in. And, Boom is such a big part of our store. And, the creators that work with you are the people, like we just talked with Jeremy Hahn the other day. We love that guy. And
I love that guy too.
He's so cool, man. It's just, I don't collect very much, but I do have a few art pieces from him that I will never, ever, ever get rid of. But
I don't know if you mentioned this. Probably didn't because there'd be no reason to. But like he and I, because he worked on the Darkness for a number of years at Top Cow, and he and I we jokingly referred to each other as conwives. Like we would room together, and we were just like we were on the road together a whole bunch.
Yeah.
You know, and so he's one of my favorite dudes in the industry. I love him. I love his wife, and you know, his family, and I think. He's also one of those really uniquely gifted people that is equally talented as a writer as he is as an artist and as a business person, as an entrepreneur. I think he's really unique as well. So I'm glad you guys had a chance to talk to him.
The first time I saw him was Battle Hymn with Clay at Image, and but I remember several years ago when the tornadoes tore up part of Joplin. And he and his wife opened their home to people from their town that they didn't know.
Yeah.
So an impressive artist, an impressive writer, but just a damn fine person. So. Franco, do you have?
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think just to jump on what you guys are talking about, you know, the video that you put out, Philip, and then you know what Marc was talking about. I think all of that boils down to a humanness, being a human, being a decent human being, and knowing what all of this stuff reaches out to, who it reaches out to, and connecting with them on that human level. You know, I've met few people in this business that are not like that. Very few. But you know, a lot of people within the comics industry are that. They have those. You know, us as writers and artists tend to lead a very sheltered life where we don't go outside much. But you know, a lot of these creators that I've met have that humanness within them, that wants to speak out to the world and do good and stuff like that. But yeah, enough of that silliness. What's your favorite go-to cocktail? What do you like to? What do you like to drink?
Serious, man. All this good stuff. We're done with it. We're just,
I think this is the most serious question you've asked yet.
Yeah,
it's just like I'm gonna be ready for some dead air. No. Actually, what's funny is like part of what I've done during this kind of like safer at home period is I've always enjoyed a good drink, but generally I haven't had cocktails unless I'm out at a bar, right? Because like you got to have a bunch of stuff and you got to kind of like think about what you're going to do and the equipment and whatever. But now that I'm home all the time, and I think like many of us maybe had the initial instinct of like, let's open a bottle of wine tonight. Oh, we finished that bottle of wine. How did that happen? Which gets very dangerous when you move into spirits, right? So like traditionally I would drink, whiskey on the rocks or neat or whatever. But during the safer at home period, I've really gotten into making cocktails because it's become this thing that I can like look forward to at the end of the day. That's a creative thing that I'm doing in the same way that like baking or cooking might be, right? Like it's this like creative expression without like any pressure on it, you know, because like at the end of the day, it's like, oh, that cocktail, I didn't like that one very much because I won't make it again. So I've made a bunch of different ones, but I think at the moment, I tend to go towards boozier cocktails that have like really good kind of like you call it like mouthfeel, like they kind of like sit in your mouth for a while. So I love for the last couple of years this cocktail called the Vieux Carré, which is a New Orleans cocktail, but it's got just like and I think it means like dear heart or something like that in French. It was invented at the Carousel Bar in New Orleans. And if I had to describe it, it would be like a bitter cocktail like a Negroni if it had a love child with a sweet cocktail like a Manhattan. So it's just like very complex, got a bunch of different stuff in it. And it's very easy to get inebriated on those. So you just have one.
Nice. All right.
How about you guys? What are your favorite cocktails?
I don't drink.
Yeah, Marc. I usually don't drink.
Does Pepsi count?
It does, I think. I like what I call fruity drinks. So like anything with vodka and fruit mixtures is my go-to. I'm not a heavy whiskey or anything like that. So I like if there's an umbrella in it, I'm usually pretty good with it.
Franco, can I tell
I made one.
the Eisner story?
What's that?
Can I tell the Eisner story?
Yeah, there's a couple, but yeah, go ahead.
So Art and Franco won 3 Eisners. On their 3rd Eisner, I was still working at our Chicago shop. And I get a picture from Franco, a text picture. And it's one of those cloth reusable grocery bags. And there's bananas in it and granola bars. And there's sugar-free Red Bull. So I know it's Art's bag because that's what he drinks. And a massive bottle of vodka. And you can tell from the angle of the picture that the bottle of vodka is about halfway empty already. And the next text I get from Franco is, Art and I might be drunk right now. And then the next text is, no, we're definitely drunk right now. And keep in mind, this is 2:00 on a Saturday, or 2:00, Saturday during San Diego Comic-Con. So they're at their table. And he keeps texting me, and finally he goes, some people might say we have a problem. And a minute goes by, and the last text is, we do, an Eisner problem.
I deny everything that was said in that story, by the way.
It's all true, though.
Well, it's good. It's a good thing. It's just the 3 of us, and no one's.
No one watches these. Yeah, at all.
Art was texting me Saturday night, Sunday morning at like 3 a.m. my time in Chicago. And I told him, I was like, Art, we have an event on Sunday at the store. I got to be up in like 3 hours to go in early. You got to stop texting me. So he did stop texting me and started calling me. So,
it's just how we roll.
That's a good friend. That's a good friend.
Do you have a zany creator story that you can share with us?
Or a convention story, yeah.
Yeah,
convention story or creator story. That is a good question. I'm sure.
That your cocktail means Old Square.
What's that?
Your cocktail, the Vocar, it means Old Square.
Old Square.
Yeah,
okay.
My research assistant just
there we go.
I didn't even know we had.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just tell you too. Our lovely assistant Benjamin Haux would like me to tell you that Once in the Future is absolutely one of the best books on the stands right now, which I heartily agree with. Yeah. So.
Thank you. I agree as well. I can't take any credit for it. That's all the genius of Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora and the editing chops of our editor in chief Matt Gagnon and Amanda LaFranco, who's the associate editor on that. There's and Tamara Bonvillain, who's the Amazing Colors, right? So that's just like
that's the hell of a team.
They say that and they say like when you're I think when they ask directors what the hardest or what the most important part of the job is, they say casting, right? So like you cast that book together, like it's pretty hard to mess that up, right? Once you get all those people on the bus. Okay, creator story from a convention. Gosh, I'm trying to think of something that is not like horribly incriminating.
Anyone in trouble now.
So. Or would get anyone in trouble. I'll tell a convention story that that I think works well for the spirit of which is I had a moment at the Baltimore Comic-Con probably 4 or 5 years ago. At big conventions, I don't get to spend a lot of time at the booth because most of my day is spent in meetings and usually off the convention floor. But at a smaller show, like a regional show like Baltimore, we've got a smaller booth and there's less meetings, so I can actually get behind the table and sell some books. And I was doing that a number of years back. And that show has a lot of families that come to it, which is awesome. And so I think on Sunday, I'm standing behind the booth and a little girl and her parents come up, and she starts looking through our Kaboom comics and she starts looking through the Garfield comics. And she's like taking each one out and like really examining each one. And then she finally picks the one that she wants. And like I said, this was a number of years back. So I think it was like issue 5 or 6 of Garfield. Now, all of our kids' comics are basically made so you can just pick them up and you get a complete satisfying thing in the comic, right? But I can't remember whether I asked. No, I think her mom asked or her dad asked. Oh, honey, are you sure you want to get that one? They have the first issue here. Do you want to get that instead? And she looked at them and kind of like, what are you talking about? And she pointed at the cover. She's like, no, I want this one. Like this is the one that spoke to me. She didn't say that, but like it was clear she was saying like, I want this specific one because of the cover, and because I want to read this one. And then she reached down and she had this like little like kid purse. She opened it up and she pulled out, the like 3 or 4 single dollar bills that were all crumpled up in there. And it was just that like those great little moments where you're like, oh, right. This is why I do this, is so that some little girl can walk up, get excited about Garfield issue 6, and she doesn't care what condition it's in, and she doesn't care whether she's read the previous issue, and she's just like, it's just that pure like, this spoke to me and I want to read this. And I think that's pretty magical. So that's not a creator story, but
that's okay.
That's all.
Yeah.
And you didn't tell her that she was wrong and like take the comic out of her hand into the number one?
Totally.
I mean,
totally.
There's a right way and a wrong way, Philip.
This next question might be a little controversial, but I really want to see what your answer is. What do you think of garden gnomes?
Garden gnomes.
Yeah,
I'm pro garden gnome.
Pro garden.
Yeah.
Now, we'll give you a chance to change that answer. I want you to really, really think about that. Garden gnomes, that's a serious topic, particularly in today's climate. I mean, speaking, garden gnomes, am I right?
Sure. But, I don't know. I like the little dudes. I don't have any garden gnomes myself, but if one were to appear in my garden, I certainly.
I mean,
well, I guess I like the idea of garden gnomes.
Have you ever considered publishing a book by Art and Franco about garden gnomes?
I don't know that we've had that conversation. No.
I doubt we will, though.
we are actually publishing a book by Art called Drew and Jot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Which is excellent and a lot of fun.
I know. I've seen it. I've seen all the pages of it. So that's awesome.
I should hope so. Yeah.
So if we were to give you a cheetah, what would cheetah's favorite ice cream be?
Ooh, that's a weird one.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to go off of my youngest daughter, who loves cheetahs and thinks she's a cheetah.
All right.
And her favorite ice cream flavor is vanilla. So I'm going to go ahead and make a deductive leap and say, therefore, the cheetah that you would give me would also like vanilla.
I love vanilla. That's a perfect answer.
The judges.
Yeah,
they'll accept that answer. That was my last question.
I love asking this question, and then we could be done after this because we're getting silly. But I like to ask this of people that we interview here. In the next couple of minutes, teach me something that I don't know.
Oh, I love this. Okay. Okay. Here's a fun thing that I just learned the other day that I thought was really fascinating. So the price tag. So basically the thing that like allows us to do business in the comic shop because the price is printed on the book came from the Quakers.
Really?
Because before that, you would have a thing and everything you would haggle, right? You'd come into the market, somebody would have a thing and you'd argue back and forth. Is it worth $10 or $5? We'll settle at $7.50. The Quakers thought it was immoral and unethical to charge one person one price and a different person another price. So they created the price tag. And then Macy's and other department stores basically adopted it, stole it, the idea, because as industry was like, as we were starting to like industrialize and set up shops in big cities, they wanted to pay their staff as little as they could, and therefore they couldn't trust the staff to negotiate the best deal. So they needed a standard price so that when they hired the guy for minimum wage, or whatever the equivalent would be back in the day, that they weren't worried about what he was going to sell the thing for.
This has quickly become my favorite question that we ask.
Jeremy's answer was excellent. You find out that Bonnie and Clyde had had hidden out at his house, like the house he lives in used to belong to a doctor, and at one point,
right. He told me that. Yeah.
Out of nowhere, we're just like, all right, you win.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
I love that question. I'm going to keep it in. All right, my last one. You ready? My last question for you. You're stuck on an island. All your basic necessities are taken care of. What 2 graphic novels do you bring with you?
Oh.
Okay, I'm going to preface that with, once you answer, Franco needs to answer as well. And I will.
Okay. What 2 graphic novels? Okay. The first thing that comes to mind, because I'm actually reading it right now and finding so much joy in it. I'm reading The Complete Bone to my daughters. I mean, there's just like so much amazing cartooning in that, and so many fun, it's got humor, it's got a big epic storyline, it's got great characterization. So I think maybe that would be on there, and one of the 2. And then I think it would have to be Crisis on Infinite Earths, because I'm the biggest George Perez fan, and it's like, it feels like you get the complete one of those. That's 12 issues where there's like 7 panels on every page at least, and you're just like digging into it. So maybe not the most highbrow response there, but I don't know.
I like that.
The first professional creator I ever met was George. The first professional creator I ever set up a signing for at the first shop I ever worked at was George. When they were doing JLA Avengers, George would come into the shop looking for Avengers issues, like costume reference for the Wasp, because Mark wasn't getting it to him fast enough. So for hours, I would pour over those issues. And then a couple of years ago, I was best man at a wedding where the person that gave the bride away was George. So George and I joke that my entire career in comics has been dotted with George Perez.
That's amazing. And actually, that actually reminded me of a creator story. It's not a convention story.
All right, let's back up.
Because it's a George story.
Yes.
So I was a massive fan of George when I was a teenager. I was one of those people that like sent in their photo to be in Crimson Plague when he was publishing Crimson Plague. Yeah. I was on the poster. Were you on the poster?
I am on the poster. Yes.
There we go. When I came over to Boom, we were doing, for a little while, we were doing this kind of innovative thing where we were looking at ways that we could work with some of the best artists that like a monthly schedule wouldn't work for them, right? And we went to George, and George and I had met before, but had never like really met with me in like a professional capacity. He had always known me as a fan, and because he's got an amazing memory, he remembered me. Mark Nathan at the Baltimore Comic-Con had reintroduced us and like recommended that George speak to us. And so I pitched out this idea of how we wanted to work with him, and that we wanted him to come over and do an original thing with us. And this was kind of after the New 52 era of DC. And he had been at DC, I think exclusively for 10 plus years at that point. And we spent maybe 3 days in LA with George and his wife, Carol, and just kind of trying to make sure that we were able to convey like what Boom was as an organization and what we thought we could do. And, obviously we talked about the business stuff as well. But at the end of it, when he agreed to do it, and he was obviously like really excited, his wife at one point kind of looked at me and Ross and she said, you know, we weren't sure what to expect coming out here. And we knew we were going to get like a business proposal, but we were not expecting to get this big presentation about the culture of the company and meet all the people and really understand who you were. And we weren't expecting you to lead the conversation with so much passion, like about the work that he was going to do. And she said, she's like, I got to be honest with you. Like the last round with DC was so frustrating and so demoralizing for George that he was thinking of retiring, and he didn't think he was ever going to draw another comic again because they had because it had stopped being fun, is what he said to her. And so she's telling us this, and she said, I have not seen him this excited about making a comic in years. So thank you for like reuniting that passion and that love of the medium in him. And so, you know, I think Sirens is something that I'm really proud I got to publish. I wasn't expecting that it was probably going to be George's last long-form work in his career. You know, he's kind of semi-retired at this point and occasionally doing some covers, but he's indicated his health isn't in a place where he's going to be able to do any long-form work. So it's like, that's a bucket list thing for me, is to be able to publish the last long-form work that George Perez plans on doing. And on top of that, to be able to let him, you know, have his swan song in a way that brought him joy and reconnected him with like what made comics special for him, was just like, can't even handle it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's great.
I brought the room down again.
No,
you're coming in with a silly question.
Yeah. I love stuff like that.
Like a lot of people lambast the movie, you know, the Batman and Robin, the George Clooney Batman movie, but I love it for one reason, if for no other, because every time it airs somewhere, George gets a check because they say the word Nightwing. George and Marv get a check every time that movie shows up in syndication somewhere, because Chris O'Donnell, when he's going through the different names, he should have, you know, Batboy, Nightwing, send a check. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us at all? Or, I mean, we budgeted.
Yeah.
You've been with us for almost 50.
Yeah. So I guess one question I have for you is like, how's this whole experience of like, you know, going into trying to extend the community that Aya has built through the Patreon and doing these videos? Like, are you guys having fun?
Yes. So far, we've spoken to you, Jeremy Hahn, Sarah Richard. We had a really great chat with Walter and Louise Simonson. We had a really fun one with Dan DiDio. I don't know if he'd been doing this bagging while bored, like he was rebagging all of his collection. So that's all we talked about was his back issue collection, which was ridiculous. The Patreon has been a lot of fun. This whole situation has been interesting in that, like most shops that really want to stay not just open or like alive, but like thrive if they can and come out of it stronger if they can. We do the Patreon, and we have Threadless now, and we launched a new website, and I do live sales every day, which is not something we did before. And the funny thing is, the live sales, people show up to them to get deals and buy stuff, but they also show up because we're goofy and they enjoy hearing us joke. Which has been a really nice way to keep in contact with our customers and expand it, because there's a lot of people watching all across the country now, not just in New York or Chicago or whatnot. And so even though we don't get to see them every day here in the store, because the store itself is closed, we're connected to our people every day. And we've gotten numerous comments about how people look forward to those videos. They've made it a normal part of their routine. Because they want to stay connected to the store. And we're seeing, too, that there are customers interacting in the comments threads from different stores that are becoming friends because they joke
amazing
during the video. So it's humbling. It's humbling, I think, at times, to be, and kind of awe-inspiring to be the architects behind the community that like the support that we've seen, you know, people buying stuff and having to ship it to them, or buying stuff or buying a digital gift card that they don't ever intend to use, or they're certainly not, like, nobody wants to see us go anywhere. and that has been a really wonderful feeling. It makes we're working real hard. We're working long hours, and we're all pulling together. And we were really worried early on that this was going to close our stores for good, and now we're not. Like we've made it so far, and that is entirely due to the community that has like rallied around us.
Yeah, that's awesome. That means you guys have done it. You've built the third place. That's what people are fighting for.
That's what we were always trying to do. One of the unexpected things that happened, like I told Mark that at the very beginning we were very afraid that the stores were going to close, and the stores are really, I have to say it's 90% Mark who's driving the stores, because as creators, Art and I really aren't there a lot. But one of the things I said is maybe we should do this Patreon thing, and Mark said we should do videos with different creators, and because I'm not at the store a lot, he said, but you have to be on the videos, and I said, yeah, time wise, but I'll make the time, we'll do it. But one of the unexpected side benefits of it, which I've loved going to the store when we had signings, but my favorite part of the signings is going to dinner afterwards with like Walt and Louise Simonson and getting to hear the stories about that. So doing these videos is kind of that for me. We're skipping the signings and going right to the dinner afterwards where we get to talk to the creators. And it's been like, I look forward to these videos because we can ask silly questions, but we get to talk about the industry, and we just get to hear those stories. The George Perez story that you told, that's the stuff I love. I love things like that. I love, how do these people, especially like, I idolize George, and how does someone like that find the fire to be the creative force that he is? Because that's something that I strive for all the time. With me, it's like, am I doing it? Am I really just kind of waiting to be found out as like a fraud, like you said before? That's a daily thing with me. So I love to hear those type of stories. So the added side benefits of this video is helping me out.
That's awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Well, sir, thank you so much for chatting with us for a while and your stories and your time. We do appreciate it. And, we're big fans of Boom. Everything y'all are putting out, the creators you're working with. And I always love running into you and Morgan and Ross. And, if there's ever anything that we can do for y'all other than just ordering books, we'd be happy to. So.
Well, we're big fans of Boom. So this is a mutual fan appreciation society. Love what you guys do, and the community that you're building, and the voice that you are within the comics retail community. So, keep at it. I'm excited to hear that, you guys are going strong and that you're finding new ways to engage. And hopefully that means, like you said, that, there's a silver lining to any of this, is that it creates an opportunity for us to rethink the way that we're doing things and get better and come out of it stronger.
It's a chance, I think, and this will be the last thing I say. Our industry has been in a weird place for a while, and this has really made me rethink how our store works. Not just how we operate to make sales and pay bills, but take the core of what we want our store to be and move it forward and see how. And I think a lot of stores and a lot of publishers are now thinking about that along those same lines, the industry as a whole. Like, I think we've known before, like, you go to Comics Pro meetings or you go to the retailer summits, and we know there are certain things that have to change or certain things that have to evolve. And as weird as this is, and as sad as it is, because we're going to see some stores close down, this store, I think, is providing that impetus for us to find ways to push it forward in the best way possible, which is odd. It's odd to think that, but I find that is the case.
Yeah, I think when things are relatively good, right? Like, something may not work great, but as long as it's not broken, you just kind of go, I'll keep going this way, right? Because it's not hurting me. Yeah. And I think these, obviously, this is the most extreme version of a crisis that any of us could ever contemplate. But I think, these crises do provide us an opportunity to go, okay, I need to rethink how we're doing stuff. And the last thing I'll say is I really believe that it like I said in that video, and I've been trying to reiterate, is like, I think it all comes down to like, we got to think about who are we, why are we doing what we're doing, what do we believe, right? And if you can get back to those core things and put that back out into the world in your work, whatever that work is, whether it's content creation on Franco's end, publishing on our end, the store, like, I think if we can all do that, the industry will be better for it, it'll be stronger for it.
Yeah, man, let's keep doing it.
That's true.
Cool. Problem solved. I figured it out.
Yay!
Thank you, Philip, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
My pleasure, guys.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
Oh yeah, go wash your hands.